I know. I said I wasn't going to make videos about this, but come on, I can't help it. This is a Githzerai, a noble race of people descended from one of the only two Gith factions to survive the Mind Flayer Wars, preserving Gith fighting spirit while adopting a more austere and pacifist role after their struggle for freedom from the most monstrous slavery and oppression, where their most fundamental rights, even down to their biological identity, was stripped away from them. I suppose it could be argued, if the company writing their story had even a little bit of actual brains, that the current appearance of the Githzerai in the latest monster book for the game is a reflection of their species-wide decisions and just normal personal preferences having some impact over time naturally on their smaller, more isolated population, now free of any Mind Flayer control and the Mind Flayer's aesthetic preferences, that the Githzerai would slowly transforming over time back to what their species originally looked like before they were enslaved and genetically modified by the Mind Flayers. But you know, and I know that the publishers are way too stupid to embrace the actual cool and more progressive and socially relevant story hook in favor of just making the monstrous humanoids more fuckable for today's thirsty shut-ins. Another Star Trek furry you can stock your Baldur's Gate cat house with. Literally cat ears. Okay, so the reason this latest gentrification of monstrous humanoids has got my attention is that I know this species and it's not the Githzerai. See, if you want to redefine something this much, you can run further and further into the risk of remaking something that already exists. This is not a Githzerai. This is a Garpian, a Space Garp from long-running science fiction icon 2000 AD comic that brought us Judge Dredd, Strontium Dog, Rogue Trooper, Slain, Nemesis, basically the who's who of Thatcher Britain punk, rock, comic, anarchy icons. Ace Garp Space Trucker was an exaggerated and comedic take on both trucker culture and classic space opera tropes. This series plays with the idea of truckers as a working class backbone of the galaxy, much like long-haul truckers on Earth, but in a setting filled with bizarre aliens, corrupt space cops, and absurd legal loopholes. Central to this was Ace Garp, a walking exaggeration of 1950s and 1960s American trucking culture, complete with CB radio lingo and long-haul slang. Ace Garp is a Garpian, an alien species characterized by the exaggerated, almost cartoonish features. He has long, pointy nose, oversized ears, and a huge toothy grin, and a wiry build. His design, much like the Ace trucking co, leans towards comedic caricature with its elongated head and exaggerated features, making him insatiably recognizable. And I instantly recognized that the Githzerai in Dungeons & Dragons 2024 look very much like Garpians. It's not just a skin-deep likeness. No, you see Ace Garp, and I think in one other instance in the comic we see another one, an animated, seemingly self-aware scarf that Ace Garp wears with tassels in the shape of fingers and a thumb. That ends of the scarf form and almost like a pair of secondary hands, only partially under Ace Garp's conscious control. They are very much just there for the artists to of the comic to add some comedic chaos and commentary into the scene. But when you consider that the Githzerai have innate invisible mage hand ability at will to represent their mental powers, there is no reason why they couldn't be animating an object that could move around every day for many, many years, a worn and handy garment like a belt or a scarf, for instance. It does make perfect sense. So here we are, against my better judgment, continuing this deep dive into the most unlikely spell-jamming crew ever to haul crates of volatile goo across the Astral Sea. And I know, I said I wasn't going to make a video about this, but once you start pulling this thread, you find it's attached to this whole damn tapestry. So now we have to talk about the rest of the Speedo Ghost crew, because if a Space Garp Githzerai with a sentient scarf wasn't enough, strap in because it gets weirder. Grab yourself a tasty beverage, we're about to get deeply nerdy. First off, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather the skeleton. Literal skeleton crew. See, most ships running cargo in wild space don't exactly have the budget for seasoned professionals. So what's the best way to cut down on wages? Simple. Crew that doesn't need wages, or food, or air. That's right, the Speedo Ghost is crewed by animated skeletons, which is technically illegal under certain religious jurisdictions, but this is space trucking, not an ethical debate in the temple courtyard. Skeletons are cheap, they don't ask questions, and they don't unionize. They also don't have lungs, which means they can't complain about working conditions, and let's be honest, you need that on a ship where the captain is a Githzerai space trucker with psychic accessories. The muscle? That's where things get even more interesting. See, normal ships hire big scary dudes to handle any pirates or hostile boarding actions. The Speedo Ghost? That ship's muscle is a revenant. Yeah, a walking, talking, unkillable embodiment of unfinished business. Now, usually a revenant has a single burning goal they're obsessed with achieving before they can rest. But what happens if that goal is vague, like never let anyone screw me over again? Congratulations, you now have a very dedicated, very terrifying enforcer who just considers it their job to be eternal karmic retribution. This guy isn't protecting the cargo out of any sense of duty, he just really, really likes the idea of revenge, and he considers space piracy a personal affront. I can only assume that his very particular freight worker in a previous life probably spent decades getting stiffed on paychecks before finally deciding upon returning from the dead that he would spend eternity making sure no one ever gets away with that again. That's exactly the kind of undead spite you need when dealing with the cutthroat underbelly of the spell-jamming freight world. Then there's the ship itself. The Speedo Ghost isn't just a cool name, it's also alarmingly literal. The ship contains a sentient artifact that runs the whole operation, which should be a red flag. See, spelljammers have a history of being bonded to artifacts or living intelligences that, while that sounds great on paper, in actuality it means that your ship has opinions. A sentient ship doesn't just let you fly it, it actively participates. Maybe it refuses to go in certain directions, locations. Maybe it prioritizes routes that make no sense because it's got its own secret grudge against some far-flung colony. Maybe it has a penchant for picking up weird, half-dead hitchhikers who, I don't know, turn out to be unstoppable undead juggernauts looking for a new career. Either way, it's not just a cargo hauler, it's a character in its own right, which means at some point it's going to start making decisions that no one asked for. And that brings us back to the Githzerai trucker, who is, against all odds, making this whole mess function. The scarf? Oh, well, it's not just fashion, obviously. It's made from some kind of alien weave that reacts to telekinetic input, which, for a Githzerai, is about as complicated as breathing. You ever get so used to your favourite tool or pet that it just basically becomes an extension of yourself? Well, that's what the scarf is. It's a psychic symbiote. It's not alive, just the remnant of a long-gone entity's instincts and responses. Think of it like an ultra-advanced version of muscle memory, except instead of remembering how to tie your shoes, it remembers how to slap people on your behalf or pull a lever when your hands are busy driving. It's mage hand, but with style. The Githzerai probably picked that up from some backwater arcane salvage yard, shrugged and figured, sure, this is convenient. Now it's just part of its daily routine, like a trucker's handy cap or a dashboard bobblehead, except, potentially sentient. So, what we've got here is a perfect storm of misfit brilliance, a long-haul space trucker with the discipline of a warrior monk, but the laid-back attitude of someone who's been playing fast and loose with Interstellar's freight laws for too long, a crew of literal skeletons, an enforcer who doesn't understand the concept of let it go, and a ship that has probably a penchant for dramatic irony. And somehow it all works, because of course it does. This is Spelljammer, the wild frontier of wild space, where the only rule really is, does this make a good story? And the answer unequivocally is yes. Now, the real question is, how long before the publishers manage to completely misunderstand why this is awesome and decide to water it down with some kind of boring market-tested mediocrity? Give it time, folks. Give it time. And speaking of giving it time, let's talk about Githzerai and their little habit of setting up bastions in the worst possible places. See, most sensible beings look at a chaotic, unpredictable void like Limbo and think, yeah, no thanks, I like my atoms where they are. Githzerai? They look at it and say, challenge accepted. Their monastic strongholds exist in the swirling chaos, constantly shaped and reshaped by sheer force of will, because that's just how they roll. And when they're not dealing with the ever-present threat of reality itself unraveling, they're usually busy fighting off the Slardy, who have their own ideas about what should happen in Limbo, most of which involve rampant mutations and indiscriminate carnage. But Limbo isn't the only place they carve out their sanctuaries. Some Githzerai take their mastery of mind over matter even further, establishing domains and realms of dreams. These aren't just lucid dreamers, they're lucid dream landlords. The greatest among them permanently sleep within their own dream bastions, existing in a perpetual state of awareness while their physical bodies remain hidden and protected. It's a level of mental discipline that takes a lifetime of meditation. Well, it makes that look like a catnap. Then there's Pandemonium, a place that is, to put it mildly, an auditory nightmare. The howling winds drive most mortals to madness, but the Githzerai have worked around a harmonic sanctuary. They carve great valleys and towering spires that resound and resonate with counter-harmonic tones, neutralizing the relentless screaming of the plane's winds. Monastic orders live there, constantly singing and humming and chanting in perfect harmony and synchronicity, turning raw chaos into something that resembles peace, at least for those with the discipline to maintain it. And of course, not every Githzerai has the iron will to endure such constant psychic strain. Some decided that while they like the idea of monastic life, they prefer to practice it somewhere slightly less insane, and that's where your trucker comes in. Because if you think Limbo, Pandemonium, and the Dream Realm are chaotic, try sailing the Astral Sea, where the only thing more unpredictable than the terrain is the number of pirates gunning for your cargo. And really, what could be more fitting for the Githzerai than trying to impose order on a lawless void? Space Garp isn't the only Githzerai out there making a living in wild space, though most of his kin would probably shake their heads at this choice of career. Sure, hauling hazardous cargo through pirate-infested hyperspace lanes isn't exactly a meditative pursuit, but if you think about it, it's not so different from shaping a bastion in Limbo. You need focus, you need discipline, and an unshakable will to keep everything from flying apart, literally and metaphorically. In fact, he's not even the only one in the Astral Sea bending the traditional Githzerai path into something new. There are others scattered through the spell-jamming lanes who have found purpose outside of floating monasteries. Some act as independent enforcers, mercenaries for hire, or deep space explorers mapping the eddies of Planner's tides. A few even work alongside the very Githyanki, their brethren that they consider bitter enemies. Not all the red armoured raiders are loyal to their Lich Queen. After all, some chafe under her rule, seeking freedom on their own terms, and in rare cases uneasy alliances form between the Githzerai and their wayward kin. A shared hatred of the Mind Flayers can forge strange partnerships. And let's not forget the outliers, like those like Ace, who have taken to wild space with a motley crew of outcasts. Some Githzerai take to spelljamming as navigators, their disciplined minds capable of intuiting the strange gravitational eddies of the astral and steering through the madness with an almost supernatural calm. Others drift into the underworld of interstellar crime, using their psionics to pull off heists, smuggle contraband, and even play interplanet espionage games. Ace Garp's new crew is proof that the astral frontier doesn't care where you come from, only whether you can survive it. He's got GBH, an ex-Undertaker ogre turned heavy revenant, and undead with an unshakable work ethic and the vendetta against, well, everyone trying to screw him over. He's got the ship's engineer, a skeleton with a genius for jury-rigging eldritch machinery, whose habit of talking to himself might be a holdover from when he had vocal cords, and of course, the Speedo Ghost itself, the sentient artifact ship with an agenda of its own. Somewhere out there, you can bet there are more like them. Githzerai monks who traded the quiet halls of meditation for the hum of spelljamming engines, the rush of the chase and the thrill of the deal. Because the multiverse is vast, and sometimes enlightenment doesn't come from sitting still. Sometimes it comes from keeping your hands on the wheel, your eyes on the stars, and your scarf wrapped tightly against the void. If I were to expand on this theme with my own world setting, Githzerai, who leave behind the monasteries and take on wild space, are a scattered but formidable presence, bound less by hierarchy and more by shared pragmatism. They are wanderers, not out of purpose. Each of them, in their own way, is searching for something, whether it's knowledge, vengeance, or a simple path unshackled from tradition. Among them are the Starborn Bastions, small enclaves of Githzerai mystics and navigators who operate from within asteroid bases, often built within the wreckage of ancient spelljammers or in the husks of dead gods floating in the Astral Sea. These bastions serve as way stations for their kin, offering sanctuary, information, and sometimes training in the psionic arts, though What they ask in return is rarely straightforward. Some demand service, others favour to be collected later, and a few operate on cryptic codes of barter only they seem to understand. Then there are the Echo Riders, a loose network of Githzerai spelljammers who specialise in mapping the shifting tides of planar travel, charting paths through unstable regions of wild space, and occasionally guiding others if the price or the cause is right. They are infamous for their ability to ride the void using psionic attunement to detect minute disturbances in space-time, allowing them to anticipate astral storms and hidden gravity wells before any normal navigator could. They are also one of the few groups known to run the Dead Man's Corridor, a treacherous, shifting hyperspace route that passes through regions infested with Mind Flayer dreadnoughts and Githyanki warships. And of course, there are those who operate on the fringes, the Void Striders, lone wanderers who have cut all ties with their people and walk their own path. Some hire out as mercenaries, wielding their psionics with deadly precision, while others drift into the criminal underworld, using their discipline and abilities to infiltrate, steal, and vanish without a trace. One thing is certain, wherever there is chaos in wild space, there will always be a Githzerai trying to impose some kind of order on it, whether through the discipline of the blade, the clarity of the mind, or the cold calculation of a well-planned heist. Yeah, that'll do nicely. My name is AJ Pickett, your D&D cosmology host with the most, making sense of the senseless and handing fantasy back into the hands of the fandom. Thanks once again for joining me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share my videos, buy some merch. Every little bit helps keep me independent since 2018, making content for your easy listening pleasure. As always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.